Hello there, it's Chuck with Pocket Snakes again. Today I'm going to show you a keychain fort built. So this is 4 strands of 3/8 inch, roughly, strips of 2 black and 2 royal blue. And this is the center of the strips. The strips are about 5 feet long. So this is the center, and to make a loop, this is about the right length. You can simply, if you want to do a side-by-side pattern, tie it off. So I'm going to bring the black strand through the 2 blue strands, like so, and then just the opposite. So this is just a 4-plate round. So that makes each of these what will be 8 tails. Right now I'm only working with 4 of them. So this will make a side-by-side diamond pattern. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And test around your finger for what diameter you want. This one I'm going to have a fairly small loop on the end. And just gently seat the 4 strands. I'm going to do 1, 2. And so this is for a side-by-side pattern. You got 2 blue strands and 2 black strands. Two blue strands on the left of this one, and 2 black strands. So it's going to make a loop that's that size. This strand just came under one. This one just came over the black strand. So this one goes under, over. The next one came over, but we went under over here, so we're going over, under. And you see that these 2 are over and these 2 are under. So that will cause a pattern issue. But if you want to correct that, when you have a side-by-side, take this and add 1, 2 more to it. And again, just seat the strands. So now this one goes under, and this one over here has gone over, so this one goes over that one, and under this one, and this one just went over, so it goes under that one, over this one. So we have all blue on the left, and we have all black on the right. I'm going to snug this up. Tying a quick release version of a weaver's knot. So it's got a loop over here, and when you pull this, that loop will pull through the knot and release. And you take this tail and tuck it through a loop up here, so it's not in my braiding path. Okay. 4. So these are all blue. You want to make sure that all the skin sides are up. In this case, it's very dark on the bottom side, but it's blue here. So it's pretty easy to tell. The black side is smooth on one side. It's smooth on one side, and the flesh side is kind of a little bit rough. So this top one just went under something and then over something. So I'm going to bring it underneath this one. I'm going to bring it over, under, over. So it's just turning it into an 8-plate round. On both sides. You'll have to forgive me a little bit. I can't really exactly see with my camera in the way. So I'm doing this by feel, more or less. So my speed is a little diminished. Well, accuracy is more important than speed, in my opinion. And you'll notice I never really let the tension get away from me. I don't ever let go of any of the strands. I'm always pinching them or holding them in some way. And that helps the braiding stay nice. Okay, so now we have our loop. You notice we have a nice checkerboard pattern, and it's a hollow braid because we don't have anything in the middle of it. And this is a shot-loaded core. So this is full of very fine steel shot. It's very fluid. It's very snaky. And it weighs about 3.5 ounces. I don't know if you can hear that, but it has quite a bit of impact. So one end of this has got a little bit of a point to it, and you can still see the wax on it. I'm going to add a little tallow. You can't oil and condition leather on the inside of a braid very easily. That's one reason I braid with a little bit of oil. So I'm pushing this into the braid, and then you pinch it and find where the end of it is. Okay, so it's way up here. So it's way up, right at the point. I'm going to pull it down about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to gently snug up this plating around it. One reason I like to plate off of a vertical hanging point is that the vertical hanging point allows it to rotate and show you the tension. You can see whether the braiding is nice and straight or not. But that snugged it up quite a bit. I'm going to continue this pattern for a bit. So it's under, over, in both directions. Notice I pull this strand I'm going to braid. I separate. I take the one that's under, lift it up, push the one that was on top down, lift this one up, and gently pull the strand through. And using the back edge of your thumb to guide it is oftentimes a nice thing to be able to do. Everybody braids differently. Some people tension after each strand is laid. I like to snug up stuff after one pass. That's the 8th strand coming around, so that's one pass. So this here, this part isn't cinched up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And you'll see the top of it twist. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see it's a diamond pattern. You can roll this when you're done and straighten it out. So I'm going to try and lower the camera here. So if you want to keep the tension in what you're doing, you pull the bottom strand, loop it around. That'll lock it off so you can let go of it. This loop that I made, I'm going to pull through. And I haven't lost the tension, which is a nice thing. So I've still got 4 on the right that are black, 4 on the left that are blue. So now I'm going to transition. You can do a lot of fancy braiding patterns, but with 8, it's a bit much. So I'm going under 1 over 3 because this second strand is an over, and if I put it under that strand, it'll look really odd if I do it later. This one also. I'm going under 2/2. Under 2/2. You'll notice something about this as you do it, and that something is that the strand color on your left becomes the straight pattern on the right, and the color from the right becomes the strand pattern from the left. Retying this real quick. There's lots of advantages and disadvantages when you're braiding to leaving things loose, tying things tight. You just have to figure out what works for you. Under 2/2, under 2/2. And I cut these strands so that there would be, when folded over, a total of 4 strands that were twice as long as what I thought I would need. And so the core, this piece here, is a total of 2 feet long, which means each of these strands needs to be longer than that. So the amount longer than that is half the length of the strand, or half the length of the core, roughly. So 1.5 times on each side, which is 3 times as long as the core, which is why I started with 4 6-foot pieces. And I'm keeping tension on the strands that I'm not tightening up, and I'm keeping tension on the core. We're going to try just sliding this back as I braid. See how that works. I figured out that if I pull the strand down and out that I want to braid, lift up with my thumb on the strands I want to split, and I've got this pinched between 2 fingers, it allows me to braid a little faster and not lose the strand because I'm always in contact with it. And it's a good idea to turn your work over, make sure you're not messing things up as you go along, because the worst thing that happens is you end up unbraiding the whole thing to correct an error. But after you make 100 of something, you probably won't make an error again. And these are two slightly different tempers because they're different colors of leather. And so if you can pre-stretch your leather, it will, if you can wet soak it and stretch it before you work, you can help this line of breeding stay straight. Because if this one's more relaxed than this one going this way, then the one that has some stretch, it'll release tension, it'll rotate towards the side that doesn't have as much stretch. And you'll also notice that I'm always pinching down on the last braid that I was working on with one thumb or the other, and that helps lock it in place so that it can't come undone. I find this very soothing, or honestly I wouldn't do it. I make a lot of these keychain quartz. You can keep them as a keychain, or you can use them basically as a self-defense whip. If the leather is soft, they are quite soft and supple. If you have to strike with them, they have quite a bit of padding, but at the point at which the leather stops compressing, it's basically a steel rod, even though it's flexible. So it'll dissuade somebody if they're trying to lay hands on you. Okay. Let's see if I can move this up a little bit. Tying a small chain of half hitches this time. Some people lose their way when they're braiding, and in this particular braiding pattern, which is an 8-plate whipmaker plate, the bottom strand is easy to tell because it's always on top because you come over the last two, and it points to where the next strand is picked up. So if you ever lose your way, it's pretty simple to pick up where you were. Or I make it look really simple. Now all these strands are beveled, so that means that the underside has an angle on both sides. It's pretty hard to tell, but each of these strands is beveled. I've got a video up on how I bevel them. And if anybody has better ways of beveling leather in mass, I'm always interested in learning if better ways to do things that will save me time. Another thing is when you tension it, if you vary which side you start with the tensioning, don't always use the right side. Depends on how much tension you're putting into it. And I'll wrap my hand around it because this material right now is a little oily and slick. Back the tripod up again. Currently working in my living room because it's about 102 on the back porch because I'm in Tucson, or just outside of Tucson. You get more of a hang of this once you, like I said, make 100 of something. If you're only making one for yourself, it's one thing. So, this particular core, which is flexible and full of steel, this particular core took me a while to develop. It's got quite a bit of directionality. Like it only wants to coil where it wants to coil. There are 2 or 3 layers of material plus the steel, and then it's electromagnetically isolated with strong magnets, which is a bit of a trick. Then it's heated in a hot dipped in a microcrystalline wax that ionically isolates the leather from the steel, and it's a self-healing wax. It also protects the steel from corrosion and causing problems. I've been trying to stay away from lead. Lead is just got so many issues. You don't need the health issues of lead. So I can build these in tungsten as well for people, but the steel is quite enough. Another useful trick if you're breeding something that's longer than 6 inches is, especially if you can't see it, or you can't see it well, is use your fingertips as your eyes. If you have a strand that flips, running your fingertips over it will tell you. Now this whip is ever so slightly wider. This type of cord is ever so slightly wider here than here. And that gives it a directionality. And in a keychain or a defensive keychain, it's nice when it holds the path you intend. And same thing with whips. We want them to roll with the belly. This one has a definite roll to it. This is not meant to crack. It's mostly meant to hold my keys. And when I say it makes a nice keychain. Makes a bit of a ridiculous keychain. If you make a 2-footer, which is the long version, that's what it looks like with my keys attached. As you can see, its directionality. This one's all black. This one happens to be an oil tanned leather. I think it's a... This one's about 4 years old. After you've been doing this a while, you can listen to a college lecture or two, or your favorite podcast, or, study a foreign language while you do this. It just makes me happy to set and braid things that do what I want them to do, which is not always the easiest, to make something behave. Sorry about the tripod there. I'm just doing an under 2/2. So if you choose to have longer tails, instead of 6-foot strands, if you want an extra foot on each end, you have to start with a 2-foot longer piece. So instead of a 6-foot, you want an 8-foot strands, and that will leave an extra foot on each of these tails. These tails are going to come down really close to the end here. The nice part with this material is, since it's fabric, we can cut it off exactly where it ends. So I'm just making this one. You'll notice that I have a long strand here and a long strand here, and I did that on purpose. When I laid out these strips, I left 2 strips, one of each color, of a longer length. And I did that intentionally so that when I get to the bottom, I could put a decorative wrap on it. So somebody requested having no feathers or almost no feathers on one of these. So I didn't want them slowing it down. I just wanted a few little feathers on the end. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now my long strip is here, so you can see my long strip, and my long strip is here. and take a key. This is a brass key. And pull that long. Oops, that's not the long strip. This is the long strip. Okay. Wrap this back up, stick it in my pocket. Okay, so now I've got a blue and a black strip. So I'm going to pause this video and get the camera set up to finish this. Okay, so I'm back. So I pulled this blue strip out. So I've got two strips. I've tensioned all these up. And so now I'm going to tie off the braid. This is like an artificial sinew. This happens to be a braided Kevlar. I'm putting 60 or 70 pounds of tension on that. Okay. The main reason this is here is to lock this down. Half inch against the stem. And one going the other direction. This material is 1/10 of an inch wide, and it'll hold 165 pounds of tension. So we have these two strips here. them as feathers. So there's, bring it into focus. I'm using a manual focus on the camera because otherwise it jumps all the way around. So it's easier to see. So there's a couple things. So this is the core that we started and we braided around, and that's the end product. So this is 3/8 of an inch or so in diameter. And this is about 1/2 an inch in diameter. This is a keychain cord. And I haven't rolled this yet, so it's still a little bit, it's still got some roughness to my fingertips. So we've got these two longer strips. I'm just going to unbraid it a little bit. So that's where we want to have those two spiral up. So under here is the shot bag. So I'm going to snip off this shot bag over the trash can. I'm not going to do it here. About a finger's width from the end. And then I'm going to scrape out any waxed shot. I know you can't hear the bits falling in the trash can, but so there's 3 layers of fabric there, and I'm going to melt it down. Now this has beeswax, or not beeswax, but it's got microcrystalline wax. It's a lot like beeswax. I imagine beeswax would probably work in a pinch. Dip your fingers in some water before you pull that one. And if you really want to be sure that this doesn't leak any shot, you can take some Kevlar thread or something really. This is 2 strands of Kevlar thread. And then you can lash it off. This really thin thread, nice part with Kevlar thread is it isn't flammable. It doesn't burn, but I guess it will try to burn because it's, I guess this one is, oh, it's not the Kevlar burning. It's the tallow left over from my fingers. It's burning and turning into a Kevlar wick, which Kevlar wick will burn. Anyway, that'll keep anything from coming out the bottom, which is nice. We got our black strip, our long blue strip. And this is a blue, it's called a neon blue. Piece of cord that's flat, about 3/8 of an inch or so. So this is placed underneath and on the back. I'm going to add a little bit of tallow to the strips. This isn't structural at this point. This is just decorative. But you still want to tighten it up. And it's so tight I can't hardly get that piece to move. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you can see why I left the tails as long as I did. And if you take the top strip, remember I cut the angle on it. And the bottom strip, which is black. We tuck that in so that it's almost ready to be pulled in. Notice I kept the orientation so that the strip's on the outside. And keep this pinched off. And grab this piece. You can pull those strips through and out the bottom. Pull. So in my opinion, you want to pull the dark colored or the bottom strip first and seat it. And pull the top strip and seat it. And I'm running out of battery. My figures. If it tries to roll internally on you, you can flatten it and pull it through, and it should be the same direction. And this is what you end up with. It's kind of a striped finish. And you can work it. So I'm going to work it. I'm running out of batteries. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here. This, again, Chuck with Pocket Snakes. You can check out my website at pocketsnakes.com. You can check out my YouTube on Pocket Snakes on YouTube. And you can check out my other how-to videos. This has been how to make a keychain quirt. So This is how I make them. There's a lot to them, but they're kind of a fun product. If you need one of them, you can order one on my website. This one's royal blue and black, and it's available today if you'd like this one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.